Sup, nerds? It's basketball. Welcome to Horse, a basketball podcast about everything except for the wins and losses. My name is Mike Schubert, and I am joined by my trusted co-host, this episode coming out after July 15th, 2022, to the comedy album Statistically More Relatable by Adam Amawala being available for you to purchase. It's Adam Amawala. Adam, how's it going?
Oh, wow. Very, very kind of you to do that right off the top, so I don't even have to shoehorn in a plug about my album. That's true. By the time you are listening to this, my album will have already been released. Hopefully you bought it somewhere on iTunes or wherever else. But if not, it'll now be available on Spotify and other places that people listen to things. So I hope you check it out. Thank you, Mike.
Of course. Please check it out. It's going to be very good. And I'm not saying this just guessing. It's because I've seen sets that feature a lot of the jokes that are in the set. So even having not listened to it, because we're recording this on July 13th, I know that it will be good because I know the jokes on it are funny.
I am immensely proud of it, and I think that people will enjoy it quite a bit, and I think it's very much worth $10.
Hell yeah. $10 now with inflation gets you like half of a Chipotle burrito. Or maybe $10 is just to add guac. So like...
Yeah, I should have increased the price due to supply chain.
The price of microphones and headphones is going up. Let's talk about basketball. That's what we're here to discuss. We have lots of fun things to discuss about the sport and to answer your questions, because this is a very special NBQ&A episode where folks have sent in questions and we will be answering said questions. But before we get into those, we are going to do our first segment, which is called Full Court Press, Get It Like the News. But we are going to answer a question a little early because the most liked question on Instagram was from LaBook Ishbella, who says, okay, ... what is a full court press? I was telling my dad about horse, and when I was telling him about the full court press segment, he said, ha, like the basketball move. And it was in that moment that I realized I've only ever gotten it like the news.
I wonder what they thought we were referring to with the other part of the joke.
I don't know, but here we go to explain it. Full court press is very simple. Normally, when you play defense in basketball, you play just about half of the court, even less. Usually you stand around the 3-point line where all of the offensive players are usually standing. But if you are losing and there's not a lot of time left in the game and you really want to force a turnover so that you can get the ball back, you will do what's called a full court press. You'll often see this in college basketball more so than the NBA, because college basketball players really try to use team-based things to rattle the other team, and a full court press is just stressful because it will involve double teams where two players are guarding one player.
And that is called a trap, by the way.
Exactly. That is called a trap, which is also scary. So yes, basically it's just the defense putting extra pressure on the players so that they potentially make a bad pass or throw it out of bounds or travel or pick up their dribble or whatever, or you can just take it from them more easily. Think of it like a blitz in football. Football reference, womp womp. It's just a more aggressive, riskier defensive move to try to make the offense make a mistake. And that is a full court press, the basketball term.
Yes, exactly. So the whole idea is that usually when you see someone inbounds the ball from under the basket, no one really starts playing defense until they cross the half court line. In this case, the defenders would be right up on them the entire way. And it is. I mean, you've played basketball. I've played basketball. If you're not prepared to deal with getting out of a full court press as the offensive team, it can be really bad.
Yes.
Like, I remember there being a team when I was on like a 5th grade traveling team, and it was the first time we had ever played against a team who picked up full court press the entire game, and we got destroyed because we were not prepared to deal with it.
Right. And it especially works well if you have a team that maybe only has 1 or 2 really good ball handlers, because then if you double team those players, they will have to pass it to someone else. And if player number 3 is a huge step down in quality from players 1 and 2, there's a good chance player number 3 makes a mistake.
Right.
So I've done full court press a lot, and I usually trash talk along with it. Did this once in college in the freshman championship game, which we won. The guy was scared who was bringing the ball up. So I picked him up full court and said, this guy's scared. He doesn't want to dribble. And he passed a lot and made a lot of turnovers.
Well, it's usually a big benefit for the team that's in better shape.
I mean, yes, conditioning is huge.
Yeah, if a team is well conditioned, if they do a lot of cardio and have the energy to pick someone up that way, that usually is the best way to utilize it.
Mm-hmm. So that's full court press. Now let's get into full court press Well, I guess even before Full Court Press, we got to get into the Teal Memorial Locker Room,
Yes.
which is not a pun. It's just named after our first patron ever, Teal.
And it is filled with Amazon Basics basketballs, from what I understand.
Yeah, shout out to Teal, who replied to Adam's tweet from the horse account that the Amazon Basics basketball is not good. Teal said that some Amazon Basic products like yoga mats get the job done. And I said, that is true. But for basketballs, impossible.
It's just, I don't even know if the basketball is good or bad, but just the idea of showing up with a ball that says Amazon Basics rather than Spalding or Wilson or whatever is very funny to me. It says Alibaba.
No, it just can't be good. Anyway, let's get into the Teal Memorial Locker Room. You know who shows up to the court not with an Amazon Basics basketball?
I mean, it has to be our patrons.
It is our patrons, and it's especially our producer-level patrons. Polly Burge, Kendra Hadley, Salvatore Testa, Trust the Process, Siobhan Ellsbury, He Sells Seashells, Don't Go Chasing Taco Falls, Bang, Bang, Long-Suffering Timberwolves fan, Roast Beef Debris, Cade the Conqueror, Basketball is Life 2, Michaela Loves Allison, Denver Steam Nuggets, Anna Borgelli, Weird Questions, Mitch Chrysler, Steph Curvy for 3,
Bang.
and Nicole Arsenault. That's a fun one.
Steph's not particularly curvy, but I thought it would be fun.
Maybe he's rocking some curves in the off-season. Who's to say?
I mean, he's no Kyle Lowry's jean shorts, but who's counting?
You know who else would look great in Kyle Lowry's jean shorts?
Maybe our sponsor, but I can't say that with any confidence.
Who's to say? But I am to say that this episode is brought to you by Tab for a Cause, which is the easiest way to raise money for charity. All you have to do is go to tabforacause.org/horse and install it into your browser. And then anytime you open a tab, you get a really pretty picture of a nice nature background of sorts. And then you'll see tiny little ads in the bottom right, but those ads raise money for charity. And every time you open a tab, you get a heart. And then you can click your total hearts and choose where they donate the money. There are a lot of great organizations that they regularly support. They do timely things if there are timely situations that come up, whether that be a natural disaster or some sort of violence. And it's a well-run organization that makes it super easy to raise money for charity. And all you got to do is go to tabforacause.org/horse, HORSE. And then you'll get it installed in just a couple of clicks and you're good to go. And you're raising money really easily. Hooray!
Bing, bang, boom.
Bing, bang, boom, indeed. And speaking of bing, bang, and boom, I want to thank Multitude for having us as a part of the collective. Don't worry about that phrasing. That's just what normal people say about the biz here. So
You'd know. If you were in the know, you'd know.
Yeah, just a podcasting industry term here. If you're looking for some new podcasts to listen to, maybe you're trying to find something to bridge the gap between the 2-week break of horse episodes, you could listen to a lot of wonderful Multitude shows. Adam's been on a bunch. I host a bunch, but there's one that neither of us host that is very good called Exolore. It is run by Dr. Moya McTeer, who is a nice person and a genius. And if you've ever wondered what life would be like on a planet different from our own, or how writers create your favorite fictional worlds, Exolore is the podcast for you. Each week, Dr. Moya McTeer explores fictional worlds by building them with a panel of expert guests or interviewing professional world builders, and you will learn, you will laugh, and you will gain an appreciation for how special our planet really is. You can search for Exolore, EXOLORE, wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to exolorepod.com. And with that complete, we can get into Full Court Press. Get it like the news, get it like the basketball term. You get both now.
There you go. Le Bookish Bella. Now you understand what we've been talking about all this time.
Oh, yeah, it could be Le Book Ishbella. That makes more sense than Le Book Ishbella. My apologies.
Is Ishbella some sort of name that you have heard of?
Yeah, it's close enough to Isabella that it's one of those things where, you know, you can be Marcus or Marco or Mark.
Oh.
So I figured, yeah, someone could be Ishbella. Who's to say? Future baby name, feel free. If you're looking to name your plant or your pet or your kid, take Ishbella or cash considerations.
I tell you what, Ishbella Schubert. It's a pretty nice ring to it.
Gonna write it down and trademark it so that no one else can name their kid that. I'm the only one. It'll be like Beyonce.
I don't think anyone's going to try to steal that from you. I think you're pretty safe there.
But if they do a Full Court Press, they could steal it.
That's true. That's true.
There's been a lot of news happening. We've got a whole bunch of NBA free agency stuff that happened shortly after us recording our last episode.
Naturally.
And still ongoing, but also the WNBA All-Star Game happened in Chicago, and a lot of cool Chicago things happened. So let's talk about that first, because Allie Quigley, who does play for the Chicago Sky, won the three-point contest, which was very cool. It was dramatic, as the three-point contest often is. This was her 4th time winning it, and she scored a record 30 points in it, which is the highest score in any three-point contest, WNBA or NBA. And she did say that this is going to be her final one. So she's going out with a bang!
Nice.
4-time champ. That's huge.
I want to believe that she did the Larry Bird thing and walked into the locker room and was like, all right, who's finishing second?
Gosh. I mean, honestly, she's so good at it that she probably could have done it, but she seems like such a nice person that I don't think she would do that. So there were a lot of Chicago Sky players playing in the game, which is very cool for you, especially because the team is very good. But also, Jewel Lloyd, who is on my favorite team, the Seattle Storm, is from Chicago, and she played really well in the game. She scored 21 points, which is pretty fantastic. And all of the points came from 3-pointers, which is fun.
That's pretty cool.
Yes, and the Chicago-ness didn't stop there because they also did a nice tribute to Sylvia Fowles and Sue Bird because, as we talked about in our WNBA introductory episode with our resident WNBA expert, Jordan Liggins, this is the final season for Sue Bird and Sylvia Fowles. Sue Bird obviously has more name recognition because she's more out there on social media and is dating Megan Rapinoe, who has a lot of notoriety and fame as well. Sylvia Fowles is an incredible basketball player, and this is her final season, and she also was on the Sky early in her career. So they did a nice tribute to the both of them, and I thought that was really nice. And then finally, the tributes didn't stop there. They did a tribute for Brittney Griner, where at a certain point in the game, after halftime, every single player on both teams wore a Brittney Griner All-Star jersey. She was named an honorary All-Star starter, and then every single player had the number 42 and Griner on the back, which was a great way, I think, to tribute her and again, bring more awareness to the situation that's going on. There has been an update with the Brittney Griner stuff as well, in that she pleaded guilty to the charge, but then also expressed that she didn't have any ill intent and that it really seems like she's just pleading guilty because it's her only sort of legal option. I'm not going to act like I'm a lawyer or anything, but it seems like that's all she can do right now. So hopefully things turn out okay.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not surprising, but it's disappointing when you see the kind of discourse on Twitter, even in response to some of the things that we've been tweeting, where you have these exact same kinds of people who, when there's some sort of police brutality, rather than have any sort of insight on it, they're like, well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, that's what you get. It's like, yeah, so that's justified that even if she did do something wrong, she should be stuck in Russia for 10 years? Or, like, seriously?
Yes, there was a guy in our Twitter replies basically saying if you can't do the time, don't do the crime kind of thing. But the thing is, the worst case scenario is that she did have this vape juice on her and then she admitted to having it and then further clarified that she had no ill intent behind it. And even with that, that is not worth being detained in Russia for months on end. But there's still no saying if she actually had the vape juice on her or if it was just planted, but she still did plead guilty anyway. So it's absurd. And Brittney Griner did make a plea to President Biden, who isn't really known for doing stuff. So I don't know if he will do anything, but we shall see.
I mean, sometimes he reads the stage directions and teleprompters, but you know.
Yeah, so we'll just have to see if anything happens. We'll continue to update it. But regardless, I thought it was a nice tribute and an interesting way that I didn't see coming for them to raise awareness during the game. I thought it was really cool.
Totally. I did have a quick question for you about Sylvia Fowles and Sue Bird. Now, did they both get voted into the All-Star game just based on how good they are? Or was it one of those, like, their careers are winding down, the league is going to put them in? Because, like, in baseball, Miguel Cabrera and Albert Pujols are going to be in the All-Star game, baseball reference. But neither of them, especially not Albert Pujols, actually deserve to be there on merit. It's like, it's their farewell tour, so it would be cool if they're there.
No, so they just both legitimately got in, which is
That's
great.
Cool.
Whether it was fans voting for it and knowing it, but they're also both having good seasons. Right. So yeah, they just made it, which is awesome.
That's cool.
The only semi-shenanigans they did is that the WNBA All-Star Game follows the NBA All-Star Game method, where the players with the most votes from each conference are the team captains, kind of like how you had Team Durant and Team LeBron. Right. This time it was Team Stewart, so Breanna Stewart from my beloved Seattle Storm, and then Team Wilson, Asia Wilson from the Las Vegas Aces. I guess they didn't do it by conference because I think those are both Western Conference teams. So I guess they just took the top two vote getters and then made them the team captains. But then what they did is they made Sue Bird a co-captain with Breanna Stewart and Sylvia Fowles a co-captain with Asia Wilson. So that was the only sort of honorary, legendary type thing that they did.
Right. Very cool.
So that aside, the NBA free agency is wild. We will probably do something at some point with an overtime episode on Patreon where we talk about all the little minor when you compare to Kevin Durant, minor signings that happened. Even cool things for both of our teams signing players, like you getting Zach LaVine and us getting Jalen Brunson. But the big thing is that Kevin Durant has requested a trade out of Brooklyn to no longer play for the Nets, and I would like to travel back in time and give Mike Schubert a hug. Mike Schubert was in the middle of a drive to a wedding in upstate New York for one of Kelly's cousins, and his phone got 12 text messages in the span of 2 minutes when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving decided to sign with the Nets and not the Knicks. And he was a very sad boy, but he did say there is a potential with Kyrie's attitude that this all blows up. So that aged like fine wine. And unfortunately, the Nets are seeming like they have aged like old milk. And who knows what's going to happen, but one of or both of those dudes might not be on the Nets anymore. And they traded away so many picks to get Kevin Durant and Kyrie and James Harden all on the same team. And womp womp.
The thing is, though, how can they trade Kevin Durant based on what they are asking for him? Because if the reports are true and the Minnesota Timberwolves actually inquired about what it would take to get Kevin Durant, and the response from the Nets was, we want Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, and 4 first-round picks, he's not getting traded. That is ridiculous.
Right. The problem is that before Kevin Durant requested a trade, Rudy Gobert got traded from the Jazz to the Timberwolves for so much stuff.
A lot of stuff.
Basically the equivalent of 7 first-round picks, because it was 5 picks and pick swaps, and then a rookie and someone who's only been in the league for a year. So it was just a ridiculous trade. Rudy Gobert's good. I don't think Rudy Gobert's that good.
I agree.
The problem is Kevin Durant is that good. And when the market has kind of been set, you're right. I don't know if it's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if the season starts with Kevin Durant still on the Nets, because who's going to be able to trade that much and still be good enough to compete? Because that's the whole thing. If you're trading for Kevin Durant, you want to try to win the championship tomorrow. And if you have to trade all that stuff, your team isn't going to be very good. You'll make the playoffs because Kevin Durant's on your team, but he needs help.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, if the ask for Kevin Durant were only picks and future picks, I think he gets dealt immediately. But when they want your team's best 2 players, what's the point of trading for someone? Like, I don't think that the Timberwolves become a better team if they lose Cat and Anthony Edwards and add Durant.
Right. And the very interesting thing about this particular trade, and it might shake up how things happen in the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement between the players and the owners, Kevin Durant is under contract for 4 more years. This isn't like one of those big star players on the last year or the second to last year of their deal, and they aren't going to re-sign, so let's try to trade them before they leave. We saw the Pelicans do this with Anthony Davis, trading him to the Lakers. And in those kinds of situations, if a player has a preferred destination, you usually get him to that team because they are going to potentially lose this player for nothing. You might as well put that player in the place they want to be and get something rather than have the person just walk in free agency.
Right.
But in Kevin Durant's case, the Nets don't have to do that. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens, and we'll continue to follow it. But big rumblings that took place hours after we recorded our last episode.
Right. And I have no doubt that 2 hours from now, Kevin Durant will get traded.
Exactly. So you're welcome to the NBA world. We are just kicking things into motion. Now, the other thing that is interesting in NBA free agency world is that James Harden, who is a player on the Philadelphia 76ers,
Notorious Grumpy Boy,
re-signed with the Philadelphia 76ers. He opted out of a $47 million final year of his contract option and instead re-signed for, I think, just a 1-year deal of basically $15 million less. Right. And the reason he did this is so that the Sixers would be able to bring in some other good players and players that James Harden has played with before and likes. So basically, by him taking a pay cut, they were able to sign PJ Tucker as well as Daniel House Jr. He does spell his name with a U, so it's Dan Ewell. And
like Samuel, but Daniel?
You've nailed it. So that caused some rumblings because that can set a bad precedent if you are expecting players to help out billionaires and take a pay cut. In the case of James Harden and the Sixers, it was because of the rules where you have to have a certain amount of salary level under the maximum to bring in new people. So this wasn't just doing a favor to the mega billionaires that own the team. But you don't want to have a precedent where players are expected to take pay cuts because that's just bad for the whole league. and
Right.
it creates like this rough situation where, you know, you're hoping that these guys take a pay cut when they are the product, they deserve all of the money. But the other thing that's interesting is that James Harden is friends with a guy that I believe used to be an owner and no longer is of the Philadelphia 76ers. And he parties with this guy and stuff. And there might be a tampering case filed because this guy might have given James Harden extra money in a different way. Maybe some stock options on the side kind of thing.
Very interesting. Now, was this Adam Sandler from Hustle? Was it
It is
a similar sort of situation?
It is not. I have not seen the movie yet.
It's so good. It's so good.
Okay, I've heard good things, but I have not watched it quite yet. But if this is something that teams want to look into, they can file a complaint to have the NBA look into it with a formal investigation. And this has happened in the past. The last time the Nets did a thing where they traded away a bunch of picks to bring in a bunch of veterans, they were recently purchased by a Russian billionaire named Mikhail Prokhorov, this big, fancy, wealthy Russian oligarch type dude.
Sounds like a good guy.
Sounds like a very nice human. They were able to sign Andrei Kirilenko for a cheap contract. Andrei Kirilenko was a Russian basketball player with the greatest nickname ever, because his initials were AK and his number was 47. So he went by AK-47. Incredible stuff.
Yeah.
He took a pay cut to play with the Nets, and 5 teams filed official complaints just because Russian player, Russian owner, they thought surely this guy is paying him on the side, which I guess now maybe this is more believable, but at the time that does feel just kind of racist.
It does. It
just
does.
to be like, oh, country, clearly something is wrong here.
And I also want to circle back to say that I would be very happy if Andrei Kirilenko were the only AK-47 allowed in this country. Please.
So that's what's going on in the NBA for free agency. I think to have a bit of a palate cleanser, we should talk about Kevin Durant again, but in a different way, because Kevin Durant is the ultimate would he, won't he, / does he not care about what people think about him. He either cares 0% or 1,000%, and it's hard to tell.
Well, generally speaking, across all walks of life, the people who say they don't care the most often are the people who care the most.
Right. But for Durant, it's interesting. I think it's a mix of both, because I know the reason he didn't want to stay with the Golden State Warriors is because he didn't like the backlash to him joining the Warriors. So it seemed like earlier on he did care about his legacy. But now he might not care as much. Maybe he got burned out by it. Maybe he got older and wiser. But everyone's talking about Durant asking out for this trade. It ruins his legacy. He's always asking to trade to better teams. He wants to be on the good teams. He doesn't want to deal with bad situations. Unlike even someone like LeBron, who, say what you will about him going to free agency and all this stuff, he's never asked out of a contract early. So there's people making all these comparisons now of, oh, Durant's legacy. And I guess Kevin Durant either doesn't care or is very angry and cares a lot. He tweeted yesterday on Wednesday the 12th, "Did you add to your legacy today? If so, what did you do?" And then Maggie Hendricks, who is a sports writer, quote tweeted, "I emptied the dishwasher." And then Kevin Durant said, "Great leadership, Maggie. You made everybody in the house better today, which adds to your legacy." And then some other guy, Jake McGrady, tweeted, "Drank 4.5 cups of coffee in 2 hours." And Kevin Durant said, "That's not enough. Legacy points deducted."
I mean, 4.5 cups of coffee seems like a dangerous amount of coffee.
Yeah, 4.5 cups of coffee in 2 hours is way too much. So for Durant to say that's not enough, does Kevin Durant drink 6 cups of coffee a day? Say what you will about Kevin Durant's basketball legacy. I think his best basketball player on Twitter legacy is firmly intact. He's the greatest basketball tweeter of all time.
Yeah, other than maybe Joel Embiid, I think certainly up there. And I do want to give a quick shout out to LeBron James, who was spotted this past week eating his own snacks at a summer league game.
Oh, there are LeBron-themed snacks?
No, not LeBron-themed snacks. The joke was that he was at a summer league game eating almonds out of a Ziploc bag that he clearly brought with him. And the joke was like, so a billionaire is bringing his own snacks? Like, I respect this move. So I sent it to my parents because we notoriously, like, we were the family that would bring our own snacks and food to movies, even arguably to places that, like, it's probably frowned upon. Like, I remember us going to Burger King or whatever, and then we would bring, like, sodas on the side and just open them as we were eating there. So I did send it to my parents, and they appreciated it. And my mom responded, "Hey, you don't get to become a billionaire by spending money on Raisinets." And I think Deb is right.
Yeah, you also don't get to become a billionaire without exploiting other people's labor. So
LeBron, though?
I mean, look, I don't know. I'd have to look into his other business dealings, but you don't get to $1 billion without screwing people over. It's impossible. Truly impossible.
Yeah, fair enough. But I respect LeBron's billionaire-ism more than like some trust fund kid.
Yes, because I think a lot of his probably comes from basketball and then also endorsement deals, which seem to not be his fault. Now, for LeBron with the almonds, I bet that was just a health concern more than anything. I do like the idea of it being a money thing, but also a lot of sports venues just let you bring in food. Just read the rules. Next time you're going to a game, you can just bring freaking hoagies into Yankee Stadium. They don't care.
Airports too.
Yes. Except make sure you don't bring in already open jars of peanut butter, as I tried to do once, because apparently peanut butter is a liquid.
I really disagree with that. I think there has to be some sort of barometer for what the viscosity is.
Yeah, it's too thick. It's too thick. Now, full court press is complete, so we can get into NBQ&A.
Bling, bling, bling.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a sound. If Misha puts in something great. If not, don't blame Misha. It's our fault for not giving Misha a heads up. Now, we've done this in the past, but now going forward, we're considering doing this as like a tiny segment in all future episodes, just as a way to answer your questions, get folks more involved in the production of the show. Thought it could be fun. And every now and then we'll do these dedicated full chunks of episodes where we answer your questions. The policy we will have is that if you are a patron, your question gets answered. If you are not a patron, we will try to answer your question until we run out of time. But gotta support the people supporting us. So if you support at any tier and you ask a question, we got you. If not, we'll try to get to you. But gotta show love to the people who are showing us love by supporting the show.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So the first question comes from Luke Weber. Luke Weber asks, why do NBA fans/media not appreciate defense? It seems like they have a million topics around offense, ball handling, playmaking, inside scoring, shooting, etc. But defense is just simplified, quote, do they play defense? Yes or no? It feels like there's really good players who are fantastic, versatile defenders like Jimmy Butler, and nobody talks about them because they don't score 40 points a game. And Luke, I couldn't agree more. I love defense. I hate that people don't love defense.
Right. I would say the answer to this question, another baseball reference, of course,
ding, ding, ding,
is that chicks dig the long ball. And what I mean by that is there was a commercial from like 30 years ago where it's all about how like no one appreciates pitchers. They just want to see home runs. And it's kind of the same thing, right? Offense is flashy. People like seeing the big dunk. They like seeing they like seeing Steph Curry hit a 40-foot three. And defense, to a certain degree, just isn't as sexy because it's more grunt work, right? So I think that people who are basketball fans do have an appreciation for defense, but it generally doesn't end up being highlight reel material. And I think that's why it kind of gets lost sometimes, unless it's like some huge dramatic block or something like that.
That is a perfect answer. I do like that you said the less sexy thing was more grunt work because...
Nice.
Anyway, but yeah, I very much appreciate defense, but if you are a casual fan, you can't really tell when someone's playing really good defense, unless it's just a very obvious giant block. And even sometimes big blocks are not better than good defense. The best type of block is where you would just like tap it and then catch it, because then it's not going out of bounds and you get the ball back. And that, as you're saying, doesn't look sexy.
Right. The Bill Russell block.
Right. There's lots of players who do the not as flashy play, and it is better for the team. But as someone who does love defense, if the NBA started doing things like just highlights of people playing good defense, and it doesn't even have to be steal or block, just lockdown kind of stuff, I would watch that so much, because the NBA does do cool highlights where if you can't watch a full game, they usually do 10-minute full recaps of games that usually go up 30 minutes or even less after a game is completed. And for the most part, it's just made baskets. Every now and then you'll get a block, and if the game has a wild ending, they will show maybe the final couple minutes or so in their entirety, missed shots and all. But man, I would love just to see some good defense. I agree we should be praising it more. It's not praised by fans in the media, but it is praised by team organizations. Those people love to have good defenders. 3-and-D players, people who are really good at defense and shooting three-pointers, are some of the most prioritized players in the league. So if that could translate to fan appreciation and media appreciation, I would be very happy.
Right. And there are players who have built an entire career off of their defensive intensity. Like I think Patrick Beverley on the Timberwolves is a perfect example of someone who just objectively would not be in the league if it were not for the fact that he just hounds people defensively. And I do think that increasingly in the past, I'd say 10, 15, 20 years, there has been more acknowledgement of, is this person a two-way player or is this person not, right? Like Trae Young, who you love to hate on, justifiably, someone who's known as an amazing scorer, but really doesn't play defense at all. And even if he tries, he's just undersized, right? So people, James Harden's been criticized for not playing defense. I think Carmelo probably is even in that conversation. So I do think there is more of an appreciation now for a guy like Jimmy Butler, who in the vein of a Michael Jordan, who is very much not his dad, does play both sides of the ball. So hopefully that continues to be the case.
And the other thing I think could help is that more players are now getting into the media and they are calling themselves the new media. You see people like Richard Jefferson's been around for a while, even though he hates on the Knicks any chance he can get, but he is a good analyst when he's not hating on the Knicks. But also JJ Redick has been incredible this past season. Draymond Green even does stuff either in the offseason or if he's injured or whatever, he goes on TNT and talks and stuff. Having more players, especially defensive-minded players. Pat Bev had a great run in the offseason where he was trashing people. If you have players talking about defense, maybe they will put it into terms that people can more understand and they'll speak from firsthand experience. And if more players get into the media, they're already doing more podcasts. If they get more onto TV and stuff, maybe they can help us all appreciate and understand defense a little bit more.
There you go.
Okay, this next question comes from Eileen Gazesh, who says, how are brackets determined? Are they shuffled? Does the first seed always go with the 30th seed? How do you determine which seed each team is? What is a seed? So very much a seeding related question. If you're talking about 30th, you're probably referring to the NCAA tournament, which I don't know exactly how they seed that. I know there's a whole committee and it causes a lot of hubbub all of the time. It's generally based on record. And for the NCAA tournament, I think it's based on your record against good teams. But that's way more complicated than the NBA seeding.
Exactly. Yeah. In NCAA stuff, it has a lot to do with what's called strength of schedule, meaning, okay, this team might be 20-0, meaning they haven't lost, but they've only really faced opponents that aren't that good. So that gets a little tricky where like you'll have a team who at the end of the college season is like 18-9, and they're ranked higher than a team that was 26-1 because the teams that they played were tougher opponents. Don't worry about any of that for the purposes of our explaining the NBA seeding. Basically, in the NBA right now, 8 teams from each league make the playoffs. They have now added a play-in tournament. So the way the 7 and 8 seeds are determined is that there is a mini tournament of the 7 through 10 teams where 7 plays 10, 8 plays 9. It's a whole to-do. But essentially, the brackets are determined by record, best plays worst, and then it kind of funnels inward through that.
Exactly. For the NBA and the WNBA, it is just based off of record. Doesn't matter about strength of schedule. It's purely just, if you have the most wins, you are the number 1 team. If you have the least wins in the NBA, you are the number 15 team because there's 30 teams total and 15 in each conference. And then the top 10 are playoff/play-in eligible. You do the little tournament and then there you go. The only difference with the play-in tournament is that the 7 and 8 seeds now are not purely based off of record, but you could have a situation where technically the season could end with your 7, 8, 9, 10 teams having different records. But if team 10 makes it out of the play-in tournament, they might be considered the 8 seed, even though they did not have the 8th best record in their conference. They just happened to make it out of the play-in tournament.
Right. Now, how would you feel about reseeding? And what I mean by that is in other sports sometimes, so let's say the 1 seed beats the 8 seed, they would be playing the winner of the 4 and 5 seed is how the bracket is usually determined. But in other sports sometimes, after every round, they reseed it so that once again, the top team plays the bottom team that remains, which just gives more of an advantage to whoever the top teams are. Do you feel like that would be a good thing or no?
I don't like reseeding after each round because I think it just gets messy, especially if you have a situation where there's multiple game 7s on the same day and then the teams just have no idea who they're going to play.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
You wouldn't know where you're going to travel.
Right,
I feel like that gets messy.
Yeah.
The one reseeding thing that I would approve of is something that they have talked about, but I don't think will ever happen because of television deals. They've considered changing it from being 1 through 8 in the Western Conference and 1 through 8 in the Eastern Conference to instead just taking those top teams and then ranking them 1 through 16, because technically it's unfair if you have the number 2 seed in the East with a way better record than the number 1 seed in the West or something where, if this team was in the Western Conference with whatever record they had, say 50-32, if they were in the Eastern Conference, they'd be the number 4 seed. If they were in the Western Conference, they'd be the number 1 seed.
Right, but then what's the point of the conferences if they just rank 1 through 16?
It would just be for scheduling purposes because the whole original point of East versus West is that you weren't traveling as far. You were playing teams more often near you, because in the NBA, you play every team in the league twice. You play every team in your conference 3 times, and you play every team in your division 4 times. So that's supposed to make travel better. But now with airplanes and private jets, traveling's not as bad as back in the day when people were taking commercial flights or buses or whatever. You could unfortunately have a situation where you've got an East Coast team playing a West Coast team in the first round of the playoffs. And then when do you start the games? Because if you start them at 9 p.m. Eastern, that's super late, it could get messy. And it already does get messy in the finals. Us on the East Coast, all the games are starting at 9. The games would finish at 12:30 in the morning, which is kind of rough. But when you have an East Coast and a West Coast team, you kind of have to do it. I do think it would be more fair, just because sometimes you have seasons where one conference is way better than the other conference, and it's not necessarily fair. That's something they might do, but I don't think they're going to do it, because TV is the biggest influx of money into the NBA, and they're going to kind of cater to the TV deal people.
100%. All right, let's move on to the next question. This is once again from Luke Weber. Question is, if you're the best player in the playoffs, are you the best player? If Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, and Steph Curry are better in the playoffs than the regular season, which time period should we take into account when ranking them on a list of the best players? And if the answer is both, how should we weigh them?
It's an interesting question. I do think the answer is both. You have to be good at both to be considered a great all-time player.
Right.
A big example of this not happening would be James Harden. Incredible during the regular season, doesn't have the best playoff performance record. And that could be a lot of different factors, where when he was on the Rockets, he was kind of running the whole offense. Maybe he was just exhausted by the time the playoffs went around. Or maybe when a team is playing the Rockets or whatever team James Harden is on up to 7 times in a row, they can plan better. Whereas in the regular season, you're always planning against different teams. You're not necessarily focusing all your efforts into just matching up against James Harden and the Rockets.
Right.
Maybe that's why he's not as good in the playoffs. Maybe he just chokes under pressure. So I feel like that is something where James Harden, his legacy and all of that, he's not going to be considered necessarily an all-time great if he just never brings it in the playoffs. So I think that can totally happen. On the flip side, if you're only good in the playoffs, you become more of a novelty, like playoff Rondo. I don't think you can only be good in the playoffs and be considered an all-time great player. So yeah, you got to look at people who are good at both.
The distinction there is, like, you can be considered an all-time clutch player, but you're not going to be considered one of the greats. Like, another good example of that is Robert Horry, who became known as Big Shot Rob, and he had that moniker because pretty much any time there was a high-pressure situation in the playoffs and he took a shot, he made it. Now, if you look at his overall career, it was a good career, but he's not anyone who people would think of as a Hall of Fame caliber player. But his legacy is mostly predicated on how clutch he was, right? And a big thing with LeBron early in his career, which has clearly been disproven many times over at this point, is like, oh, he's not clutch, right? LeBron isn't clutch. He provably is, but that was a big knock on him when people wanted to hate on LeBron, as they always do. So yeah, I think the simple answer is both of those things matter. But if you do want to be considered one of the all-time great players, you have to be good in both.
Yes, and I think you can have players. Jimmy Butler is a great example, as Luke wrote. Jimmy Butler is someone who is always usually pretty good in the regular season, but then just ramps it up in the playoffs, notably with his shooting. Dwayne Wade would do this too, where both Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade, great regular season players, always making all-star teams and all NBA teams. But for both of them, they weren't the greatest three-point shooters. And then once the playoffs started, they were reliable, very consistent three-point shooters. And I don't know if they just work on all their threes in the days off between the regular season and the postseason, but you can have players that are already good take a step up in the playoffs, and that can really help you out. And I think that's the case for Jimmy Butler for sure. We saw that with Steph Curry in these playoffs. He just erupted this time around.
Right. And the last thing I would say to that is the difference between the regular season and the playoffs is that in the playoffs, there's really no such thing as garbage time. And what garbage time means is minutes that are played when either the game is over and it doesn't matter anymore, or ostensibly the season is over, right? So you'll have players on very bad teams every single season who put up amazing numbers, right? Like, I would say if you go back and look at Zach LaVine, for example, when he was on the Timberwolves, I think he probably had really good numbers, but a knock on him that probably he couldn't really control was like, oh, but what were the stakes, right? If your team is already out of the playoff race with 20 games left, there isn't as much pressure on you every night because there's not really that much at stake other than what you're doing individually, right? So in the playoffs, that doesn't exist anymore because everything is magnified. So there aren't going to be those low pressure situations where it's like, yeah, sure, jack up a bunch of threes because it doesn't matter.
Exactly. You can be labeled a good stats, bad team guy. And that was Levine early on. That is currently Karl Anthony Towns, but the Timberwolves made a little playoff push last year. So that's something that people try to put behind them. Andrew Wiggins as well. I'm realizing this is just a lot of Timberwolves players who are considered good stats, bad team. Apologies to a long-suffering Timberwolves fan. Okay, this next question comes from Salvatore Testa, who we always need to trust the process. Salvatore Testa says, which teams are going for the championship, which are rebuilding, and what are the telltale signs of a team in either phase? It's a good question. So I'm just going to go alphabetically from Western Conference and then Eastern Conference. So Dallas Mavericks going for the championship. Denver Nuggets going for the championship. Golden State Warriors going for the championship. Rockets rebuilding. Clippers going for the championship. Lakers going for the championship. Grizzlies going for the championship. Timberwolves going for the championship. Pelicans going for the championship. Thunder rebuilding. Suns going for the championship. Blazers, they're going for the championship, but they're misguided. The Kings going for the championship, but they're misguided. The Spurs rebuilding. The Jazz rebuilding. Now, Eastern Conference. Hawks championship. Celtics championship. Nets probably rebuilding if they trade their good players. Hornets championship. Bulls championship. Cavs championship. Pistons rebuilding. Pacers rebuilding. Heat championship. Bucks championship. Knicks championship, but they're not going to make it happen. Orlando Magic rebuilding. Sixers championship. Raptors championship. Wizards delusionally championship.
Absolutely amazing. No notes. To answer your question, Sal, about what are the telltale signs of a team in either phase, I think the biggest telltale sign is the immediacy of what a team is doing. Meaning, are you trading away your future to play for the present? So the Timberwolves are a perfect example of a team. They traded a bunch of picks away to get Rudy Gobert, and that is because they think their window is right now. They think if they have a three-headed monster of Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert, they can legitimately compete for the championship. But if you do that and it doesn't work out, like the Nets have done now several times, then you are kind of putting yourself in a really tough spot for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, because all of those first round picks that you've traded away might pan out into amazing players, and you just don't know that at the time. So that's really the determining factor for me.
Yes, that is a great answer, very clear. The other thing that I will say is that some teams can be in an in-between phase, and you saw this with the Celtics until I would even say the past couple of years. But if you are a team that has, say, 2 young players that are really solid and you want to build around them and you're still competing, but you're waiting for the right move, then your team is still contending, but you're not necessarily a threat. But you can't just trade away everything because it's got to be the right player. And for a very long time, people were wondering about the Celtics. Okay, they're going to trade Jaylen Brown because he's a little bit worse than Jason Tatum for somebody, right? They're going to make a big swing. They're going to go for Kevin Durant or Anthony Davis or whatever. And it's this back and forth of, do you keep the young guy that people would want to trade for? Or do you trade that young guy to get someone who's good immediately? So you can have teams in a situation where they might not be ready to win it just yet, but you kind of have to wait for the perfect move. And I think the Grizzlies are exactly in that situation. You got Ja Morant, who is incredible. You have a bunch of young players on the team who are very good, like Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. They're very good, and they pushed the Warriors in the playoffs this year, came up short, but they're kind of waiting for the right move where they cash in all the chips when they trade away a couple young guys and future draft picks to bring in the dude that puts them over the edge. But you have to be patient, because when you take a big swing like that, it could be something that launches you into contention, or if it doesn't work out, it could be catastrophic because you've traded away your future for this one guy. And if that doesn't pan out, yikes. It's really tricky. Really, really tricky.
Yeah. Well said. All right, let's move on to the next question, also from Sal Testa. What rule tweaks would you make if you were the NBA/WNBA commissioner to make the sport more fun to watch? And before we answer that, we should address an actual rule change that has just been implemented. And I'm a big proponent of this because it slows down the game and makes it unwatchable sometimes. There is a new rule that on anything that is deemed a take foul, which we'll explain in one moment, the team that has been fouled gets 1 free throw and the ball. Now, this is not the same as a clear path foul. So a clear path foul means that someone gets fouled and there's no one else beyond them that is on the defensive side. So essentially, you're stopping what would have been an easy layup or a dunk. In that case, the player gets 2 free throws and the ball. So it is to dissuade the defensive player from stopping momentum. In this case, what a take foul means is that on a play where there's about to be a fast break, a lot of times a defensive player will just grab onto someone in the backcourt and get a foul called to stop the play, especially early in a quarter where the team is not in the penalty and they won't shoot free throws. But the NBA is a fast-paced game. That is the least sexy thing possible to stop what could have been an alley-oop or a fast break. So the new rule will dissuade people from doing that. I am a huge proponent of that. Are you as well, I assume?
Yes, I agree, because the only reason the take foul was happening in the NBA was as a way to get around the clear path foul. It was one of those not in the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law kind of thing, where it was technically not against the rules, but it was basically the same thing. So I'm glad that they've also cracked down on it. I think it's going to make the game a lot better and faster.
Agreed. Now, I don't know if you have a specific rule tweak, but I have an idea that I think would be great. So for anyone who has watched the NBA All-Star Game, and I don't know if the WNBA All-Star Game did it the same way, but they have this thing where they play based on scores in the individual quarters. And then in the end, rather than play a certain period of time, they're playing to a target score that is determined by some sort of mathematical formula. Now, because of stats and all of that stuff, they would never institute that during the actual game in the NBA. But I think it would be really cool for overtime, so that in overtime, rather than risk it going to a bunch of overtimes and playing 5 minutes exactly, you determine an amount that probably would end up being about the same amount of time, but you know that there is a finite period at which the game ends. I think that would make it super interesting.
What's interesting about that rule change is that with the stats, that technically would make it more fair, because sometimes you'll see people brag about stats. This guy scored 50 points and had 30 rebounds.
In triple overtime.
Exactly. Yeah. You see the game had 30 overtimes. That weirdly would make it way more fair, especially for fantasy sports. I remember some of our fantasy sports things. I either won or lost because a game went into overtime and a guy got 2 blocks in overtime and that flipped the difference.
Yep.
So yeah, that's really interesting. The thing that I was thinking was there have been talks and legitimate board of governors discussions. So more so than the seeding thing. This is legitimate things that might happen. There have been talks about doing an in-season tournament. So the WNBA does this with the Commissioner's Cup, where certain games count towards the seedings. You'll see this in soccer with things like you have some games are for your league and other ones are for the FA Cup and other ones are for this different championship, etc. There has been talks of doing some sort of mid-season tournament in the NBA. Don't know if it'll be something where it's separate games or whatever. I think it could be fun to have a tournament of games separate from the 82. I think what would be fun is if you are going to do this separate tournament, why not also make them all Elam ending games? Yes. Because that'll make people want to watch it. It'll make it feel even more different. And it's a fun way to kind of test it out and see if it would be fun.
Yeah. And by the way, we'll put a link to this formula so that you understand what we're talking about. Final question from Sal. We're going to address this very quickly. Sal asks, am I specifically supposed to trust the process, or is that advice for everyone? And let me just say, that's advice for everyone. Whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that you care about, even if it's going tough sometimes, you will persevere, trust the process, stick to your guns, and you'll be all right.
Next Patreon question is from Mitch Chrysler. Which pro player had the best commercials outside of basketball, i.e. Shaq with his Radio Shack commercials / the general insurance, Jordan with Hanes, etc. So specifically not basketball ones. So I would think Foot Locker stuff shouldn't count because there are a lot of great Foot Locker ones. My answer, and we've talked about this on Horse, the San Antonio Spurs HEB commercials are quality television.
I assume that's local Texas commercials, right?
It is a local Texas grocery store chain. It is an incredible grocery store chain, but just go and search San Antonio Spurs HEB commercials. They're all amazing. Best actor of all of them, Manu Ginobili.
Nice. Mono? Or
Manu specifically.
Now, I also have to give credit to Blake Griffin for being very charismatic and funny. I feel like in pretty much any commercial I've seen Blake Griffin in, he does a very good job. He's also been in some actual shows. Like he was on an episode of Broad City where he was very funny. So yeah, definitely shout out to that. And this is, I guess, kind of not in the spirit of what the question is, but my favorite commercials maybe ever were, it was like a playoff promotion where they had Sacha Baron Cohen as Ali G.
The Ali G commercials.
Interviewing players, and it's amazing. Like there's one with Kobe where he asks him how many springs are in an NBA basketball, and Kobe perfectly deadpans like it's air. There's air in the ball. And then Ali G goes, there's air in the room. How come the room ain't bouncing?
It's so good. I got to write this down right now for a 3-on-3, but we have to do the best Ollie G commercials. It'll be like the 3 best and the 3 other best because they are so
They're
good.
really funny. Yeah.
And it was weird that the bullet train ads in this NBA Finals tried to copy them and did a terrible job.
Yeah, horrific job. Also, that movie's probably going to suck. All right, let's move on to the next question. This is from Nicole Arsenault, our most recent producer-level patron, so thank you again, Nicole. The question is, which NBA arena is the loudest? Do they measure that? Is there an arena that is the loudest? Does the home team's win-loss record reflect a benefit from the home crowd noise? Now, this is a complicated answer because it depends on what era you are asking. I would say at this exact moment, the crowds I can think of that would be the loudest, probably Golden State is up there. I would say Minnesota is up there based on the playoffs. What else comes to mind when you think of the loudest arenas at this moment?
Madison Square Garden is so loud when the Knicks are good.
Sure. Yes, that's
and
fair.
it's very loud even just at a low stakes game. I went to a game with my parents where the Knicks were not a particularly good team and they were just playing the Indiana Pacers on a regular season game and it came down to the wire and it was eruptingly loud.
Yeah.
So
I mean, when I hit that 3 at MSG, I mean, yeah, it was erupted.
A small earthquake in Midtown. But pre-moving over to the Chase Center, I've not been to a game in the new Warriors arena. Oracle was nicknamed Roracle for good cause.
Right.
That stadium got loud, especially when Steph Curry did wild stuff.
Or when Baron Davis dunked on Andrei Kirilenko.
Indeed. So
didn't they even have the noise meter, or they had the decibel level during those games?
I think they did during the We Believe era when they had their improbable playoff run. I know a lot of college football stadiums do this. They should do it for the NBA. This is something that I think is ripe for some publication to do an article about. I think it would be really cool. I currently don't know just because there's been so many new stadiums that I have not been to because I feel like they've recently rebuilt a bunch. So I am not sure, but I will say that Madison Square Garden, very loud. And then I would just assume any good team with a lot of history is going to be super loud.
Yeah.
Sixers, Celtics, Bulls, Staples Center / Crypto.com Arena when the Lakers are playing. If you have a historic team, you're going to have a lot of fans. And no matter what building you're in, it's going to be loud as hell.
The short answer is definitely not the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. No one cares.
No, not. It is so quiet. And I would say you need like a supply-demand intersection graph, but instead it is how good / historic is the team and how old is the arena. Because older arenas are smaller, so they will inherently be louder and have more reverberation. All these new arenas are so big and massive and tall vertically that you're not going to hear it as much. And that's why MSG and Oracle both got / get so loud. Those buildings are lower and wider, which make for a better viewing experience and then also a louder experience. But now land is more expensive, so stadiums are built more up and less out.
Well, I mean, it's like a comedy club, right? Like the best comedy venue is low ceilings because it keeps the sound in, right? I've done shows at like a comedy club in a mall and it's like performing in an airplane hangar and the sound just isn't as good. So it's kind of the same principle on a much grander scale. All right, we have now gotten into what I will call the lightning round. We don't have that much time left, so we're going to rattle through these really quickly. We have now moved on to the questions from Instagram. So thank you again to our patrons for the great questions. All right. First question from Instagram is from @CDonMartin. Question is, are there other one-hit wonder players a la Jeremy Lin and Linsanity? This is probably more of a 3-on-3 segment for stories of players who showed up, made an impact, hopefully got paid, and then pieced out. Great idea for a 3-on-3. Do you have any players that come to mind immediately for this? I would say like Steve Francis. Like there are people who, it's not quite the same as Jeremy Lin where it's completely unexpected, but there were players who had like an amazing couple of years and then just fell off dramatically. Like even Gilbert Arenas to some degree, and that there are a lot of factors that play into that, but it's not quite the same as Lin where like literally no one even knew who the person was, and then immediately he became the biggest star in the NBA for a period of time. So that I would say we're definitely going to kind of table that for a future 3-on-3, but that's a great question.
Right. Sometimes it's injuries a la Penny Hardaway, really great as a rookie, but then injuries made them not very good. Someone, we'll have to see what happens with Gary Payton II, but Gary Payton II is a great example of just the Jeremy Lin type model.
Jose Alvarado.
Yeah, but hopefully these guys stick around. Jeremy Lin, people forget, injuries were a big reason why he kind of fizzled out. It wasn't just him not being good. Linjuries, thank you. Yeah, he had a weird coaching situation and then injuries. So yeah, this could be a good 3-on-3 to consider in the future.
Yeah.
Next question from Ali Oxenfree 22. If there was a hypothetical one-on-one game versus Michael Jordan and Calvin Cambridge, a la peak Like Mike capabilities. So I'm guessing that's the character from Like Mike. Who do you bet on? Michael Jordan.
Yeah. End of question. Great question, but it's Michael Jordan.
Yeah, one is Mike. The other one is like Mike.
Bow Wow.
I will. Speaking of Bow Wow, I Googled the lyrics to Basketball, the Curtis Blow song, because I wanted to make sure when I made my very good Amazon poop joke in reply to the horse tweet, which we'll link, that I had the right lyrics. And when I Googled basketball lyrics, it said song by Bow Wow and not song by Curtis Blow. And I'm fucking pissed. That's
unacceptable.
A travesty. Get the fuck out of here. I'm so mad.
Unacceptable. All right. The next question is from @Buffstein_ on Instagram. We're going to do a shortened version of this. The question was, who are each of your top 5 NBA players of all time, and what Harry Potter house do they belong in? I'm just going to go with one player. Obviously, my favorite player is Michael Jordan. That goes without saying. Is he a Ravenclaw? I feel like he's like inherently evil. What's Michael Jordan? You know more about Harry Potter.
The evil one is Slytherin.
Oh, okay.
So Ravenclaw's the nerds. I would say Slytherin is...
that's definitely not Jordan then. Yeah.
Yeah, he would be a Slytherin. Slytherin, if you read the books, is the racist people, but if you watch the movies and just kind of interpret it as what the house is supposed to stand for, they're the cunning, ruthless people. That would be Michael Jordan, for sure.
I mean, I would say to everyone else who's not Michael Jordan, he was kind of the, he whose name shall not be spoken of basketball players. So he just ruined everyone's lives for 2 decades.
Yeah. So I think that's apt. I would say my favorite player is Walt Clyde Frazier, and I would say he doesn't go into a Hogwarts house because he's too cool for school.
Definitely not a Ravenclaw if that's the nerdy one, so he's the coolest guy in the world.
Yes, he's the coolest guy in the world. Next question. Liam, books, chickens. There are underscores in between. Why is basketball your favorite sport? And do you like the way they dribble up and down the court? I love the way they dribble up and down the court. I think it's my favorite sport because it's got a little bit for everything. If you want to just look at the sheer athleticism of basketball, you've got it. Dunks, three-pointers, all that stuff. If you want to get super nerdy and analytical, that is also in basketball, which is fun. And if you just like drama and stuff, basketball's got a lot of that. That was the whole ethos behind Horse, is that literally anybody can like it. That's why it's my favorite sport.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's a number of factors. One is that I was fortunate enough to grow up in the Chicago area in the 90s, so it just kind of became my life, as it did for a lot of people at that time. It's also because it was the first sport that I loved playing. That was the first sport that I became obsessed with. I remember in second grade, I think, my parents got us a basketball hoop, and that was a big deal. And I spent just hours and hours and hours just in front of my house shooting hoops. So that is why I love basketball, and I very much love the way they dribble up and down the court. Final question, and then we're going to wrap this up. From Instagram @mverma1607, as someone not in the US but is massively interested in following the NBA and WNBA, what would you suggest as a starting point apart from being a regular Horse listener? Of course, I don't know that there's really a wrong answer here. Basically, there's so much basketball content to consume that I think just going to YouTube is a great resource. I would say maybe learning a little bit more about the history of the game, and sometimes that involves reading books, some of whom are from people we've had on the show before. Going back and watching, they have highlights of like the top 100 players of the 90s, the top, like all of those resources are really helpful. What would you say?
I would say in addition to that, a great way to get into anything is just to go specific and then go deep. So pick a team for whatever reason. You think the name is cool. You like a player. You think the uniforms are cool. And then just nerd out on that team. Find out who their best players were. Go on Wikipedia and read about the team's history and their players and stuff. Watch highlights from those players. Another good thing you can do, sign up for either NBA or WNBA League Pass. This is especially if you're in not the US, if you're in Europe, Asia, different time zone, and you can't watch games at 4 a.m. These services allow you to watch a game after it is completed, and there's no commercials, so it's quicker. And right now, WNBA League Pass, they're not paying us, but since the All-Star game is over, it's $15 for the rest of the season. And you can just watch old games, and instead of it taking 2 hours and change, it'll take an hour and a half because there's no commercials at all. You can skip through stuff like free throws if you want, just kind of click the fast forward button. That's a good way. There's also very legal websites that you can search that may or may not be called TV Rex or NBA HD that have very legal replays of games. So that's also something you can do. But yeah, go to YouTube, watch some highlights of people, do some deep dives. Like I said, there's so many different ways to appreciate basketball. Find the thing that appeals to you the most and then just go all in on it. If you want the drama, look up old dramatic stuff. If you like the nerd stats, read a nerd stats book. Anything you want. Read articles if you want. Like there's a lot of good stuff up there for free on websites like The Ringer or paid. Things like The Athletic. Lots of good stuff. Podcasts too. Podcasts as well. Ours, listen to one that's more basketball-y. I recommend The Low Post by Zach Lowe. It's the perfect intersection of entertaining but analytical, but not too much.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's all great advice. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. Apologies if we did not get to yours, but as Shubes alluded to, we are planning to make this an ongoing segment where we answer one question per week. So we'll make a list of questions we have received to this point, and feel free to ask us any questions at any point moving forward.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Horror Sources, hosted by Adam Amawala and Mike Schubert. Our editor is Misha Stanton. The music is by Bettina Kampamanis. The website is by Kelly Schubert. The art is by Allison Wakeman. And the social media is by both of the Horse Boys.
Thank you to our producer-level patrons, Polly Burge, Kendra Hadley, Salvatore Testa, Trust the Process, Siobhan Ellsbury, He Sells Seashells, Don't Go Chasing Taco Falls, Bang, Bang, Long-Suffering Timberwolves fan, Roast Beef Debris, Kate the Conqueror, Basketball's Life 2, Michaela Loves Allison, Denver Steam Nuggets, Anna Borjali, Weird Questions, Mitch Chrysler, Steph Curvy for 3.
Bang.
Oh boy. And Nicole Arsenault. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Horse Hoops and on Twitter at Horse_Hoops because
Horse Hoops did that gross bang that I just did, and that's worthy of a Twitter ban.
Oh yeah, 100%. Go to our website, horsehoops.com, for links to some of the stuff we talked about today, including an explanation of what the Elam scoring method is.
And if you want to support the show and get a whole bunch of bonus content in exchange for doing so, you can go to patreon.com/horsehoops. There's audio, there's video, there's physical stuff like jerseys and stickers. Lots of fun stuff over there. You get access to all the stuff we've ever posted. So you can head down there and have a good time. But let's close this episode in the way that we close every episode, by putting our hands in the middle and saying something on the count of 3. Buy Adam's album on 3.
Oh, that's very nice bookend. That's very sweet.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Buy
Adam's
my album. I felt like it would be weird if I said buy Adam's album. I feel like
yeah, you don't want to.
Yeah, if I'm getting into the territory of speaking in the third person, we've got bigger problems on our hands.
No one likes that guy. Nobody does.
Not even Adam likes that guy.